Best-selling artist and six-time Grammy winner Billy Joel once said, "I consider myself to be a inept pianist, a bad singer, and a merely competent songwriter," during his 1993 commencement speech to the Berklee College of Music. Although this could be merely an example of his humility, it goes to show how many artists view themselves as inept or only competent at best, even when the rest of the world adores their work. Although I do not have 6 Grammys like Billy Joel to prove myself wrong, as an artist I also suffer from the mindset of viewing my artistic capabilities as inept or only competent at best, even when I have people in my life who enjoy my work. This feeling of ineptness almost stems entirely from my ability to get a job in my field. Although I've graduated with a 4-year degree, I've had my writing published in several magazines and literary journals, and I've racked up several internships in publishing, I've been rejected by all the grad schools I applied for, and I've not made it past an initial interview in any editing jobs. In October, I interviewed for a writing job, and the hiring manager seemed genuinely very interested in me. Although I have a writing portfolio consisting of journalistic work, reviews, and profile pieces, because I spoke so passionately about poetry during the interview, she specifically requested to see my poetry portfolio instead. And I always get very nervous about submitting my poetry to employers because it's more authentic to me as a person. And my poetry usually explores themes of violence, gender, queerness, power dynamics in relationships, and also generally includes some sort of strange element like extraterrestrials or the paranormal. And so there's just very strange works with sometimes darker themes, and I fear it scares away employers because it's just not normal. It was the second time in this past year that a hiring manager requested my poetry portfolio instead of a professional portfolio. And it was also the second time I got completely ghosted, immediately after emailing that work to them, even though it was requested of me. And it just makes me felt like even when I'm authentic, even when it's requested of me, I'm punished for that authenticity. And after the general constant streamline of rejection from grad schools, from any job I applied to, professional job that I've applied to, my family even sat me down and told me that I dream too big for my capabilities, I'm too self-assured. They told me that in reality I am more incapable than I think I am, and that I must settle. And then in a long conversation I had with my friend about this feeling of rejection and incapability, he told me, "Just go where you're wanted." And that phrase made me realize that perhaps I'm not as incapable as I believe I am because of all these situations that I've been in. I'm just trying so hard to be in a space that doesn't actually want me, and that doesn't align with my creative endeavors and doesn't actually excite me. I think it's possible to be two opposing things at the same time, depending who is viewing you. I am inept in professional spaces that expect me to stray away from taboo and strange topics in my writing, while at the same time I'm considered talented in spaces that welcomes that kind of art. His advice to me was to remain authentic in myself and instead seek out spaces and jobs that nurture that authenticity. Since then, I've only submitted my poetry to alternative and horror magazines. I've experienced a lot more success very quickly since I switched the kind of magazines I'm submitting to. Just last month, I was published in Rawhead Journal, which is named after a boogeyman figure from folklore. And even though I've been published before in pretty normal professional journals, I now have a greater sense of pride in being accepted to this specific journal and journals similar because it aligns more with my style and my interests. And then also, instead of applying to editing positions at very normal professional magazines, newspapers, and journals, I just established my own literary magazine called Dogwater, which only seeks strange and taboo works of poetry, fiction, nonfiction, photography, artwork, and just anything that breaks convention and rules. That's what I want, and that's what I look for. And since starting up that magazine, I've received over 200 submissions for the first issue, and then I got dozens of emails of people telling me that they love the magazine's aesthetic and mission and that they haven't seen anything like that before. I've also applied this go where you're wanted mentality and authenticity outside of my writing endeavors as well. I'm a burlesque dancer, and I recently been just ditching like typical classic burlesque style of like sparkles and sequins and jazz, and I've started doing more like experimental horror related acts. Like literally, for example, last night I performed a Donnie Darko act, and so the first minute and a half of my act, I stood on stage completely still, staring at the audience in this mask that I made, as distressing ambient music played. And then after my act was over, I was approached by other burlesque dancers and audience members who said they really admired how I was able to captivate them in stillness and in horror, and that they liked how new and interesting it was. And of course, also, I've been writing more horror poetry that tackles the themes that I generally enjoy, and I have not strayed away from that, even though it has it's caused me to be rejected from things in the past. And as I wrap up, I just want to say that it's so fruitful and fulfilling to come to terms with the fact that perhaps I'm incapable of being in a typical professional environment, and that's okay. I'm making it work doing my own thing, and I'm happier in a community that nurtures and encourages my authenticity. Instead of trying to dull myself or fit into a professional workspace, it's much more fulfilling to create the art that I want to see in the world and that I haven't seen yet. And it's been really nice creating my own rules. And as I close out, I want to say this quote from one of my favorite authors ever, Toni Morrison, that I feel like really aligns with what I've been saying, which is, if there's a book that you want to read but hasn't been written yet, then you must write it.